Hey, it's Clayton Olson, and in this video, I'm going to talk about how to create closure after a relationship has come to an end, how to get closure after maybe a connection that you've had with somebody has ended. There was perhaps a promising point there where maybe it was going to turn into a relationship, but it never did. And either way, you're left feeling like you're picking up the pieces. Perhaps the relationship ended outside of your own choice, and you're left in this place feeling like you've been left in limbo, trying to figure out what happened, trying to get an understanding around what happened. And a lot of the clients that I work with, many of them come to me, and this place of not having closure becomes a real catalyst for folks to do the work and to engage in a one-on-one dialogue with me. They had a good relationship, there was some type of exalted and expressed way of being that they felt. Maybe it was one of their best relationships of their life, or it was the most promising connection of their life, and then suddenly it took a 180-degree turn, and here they are wondering, where do they go from here? Will they find something better? What happened? Now, there's an interesting thing that happens in this place of trying to create closure or feeling like you've somehow been stuck in a certain state of mind of sadness and grief around the loss of this. And one of the things I would recommend doing is actually checking out the 5 stages of grief. You can Google that online, and you can begin to look at just the different stages that our mind goes through when we are experiencing a loss. I highly recommend that. I want to take a bit of a different angle here just so that I can insert my own voice and what I've seen over 10 years of coaching into this space. The point of this is really to give you a different perspective. It's to move the needle. It's to help you see what's happening from a couple different angles so that you can begin to metabolize this place that you're in and begin to pull at some of the strings that might be kind of knotting it in place, and offer some more flexibility and some looseness around this so that you can begin to move on, feel more at choice in your life, and open up to the possibility of what's in front of you and what's in the present moment, rather than be looking backwards in a way where you're disempowering yourself from creating anything. A point that I want to make is that I know that if you're here and you've been stuck here for however long, whether it's a couple days, a couple weeks, a couple years, I've seen it happen in that entire spectrum. Know that you're not alone. Know that I know that this is an incredibly painful spot, and that the answer doesn't always seem simple or easy of how to move on. And so again, I want to approach this with a sense of humility and offering a perspective for you to consider, for you to chew on over the days to come. And if it makes a difference for you, feel free to comment below this video. Let me know what you think about this. Maybe share your experience too, if you've been here, because anybody that's watching this video could probably use it. And I think that's one of the beauties of this channel, is there's a community of wonderful people who are dedicated and committed to personal development and growth and relationship mastery. Let's dig into just this first concept here of what I believe is happening when people are struggling with creating closure. So some of the language that they use, and that you might be using if you're feeling stuck in this place of not being able to create closure, is you might be saying that this person has left you in limbo, and that you feel like you're almost between worlds right now. The first offering that I would put out there just to consider is that it's actually impossible for someone to leave you in limbo. It's impossible for someone to create an experience for you of limbo. And what I mean by that is that whatever you're experiencing right now, I would actually encourage you to begin to look at, how are you contributing, or how are you standing in a place of actually creating limbo as a state of being? How are you creating limbo as an experience for yourself that is continually perpetuating in the days, weeks, months, years of feeling stuck here? What are the things that you're thinking about? What are the things that you're telling yourself? What are the ways that you're interpreting what has happened that is having you create a state of limbo? Now, the reason I say this, and the reason I'm inviting you to do this, is because we can often feel that when we're not getting closure from someone, we have outsourced our power, and we are demanding in some ways that the person outside of us, the person that we were in connection or relationship with, play some type of participatory role in creating closure for us. And although they may be valid, and I understand the request, I understand the desire, it actually has us be held hostage then by the circumstance and completely disempowered. And when we feel held hostage and disempowered, what often happens is we end up moving into a place of feeling like a victim of circumstance, where we have no power. And this is where we can feel stuck, we can feel helpless, and feel unable to be able to move on and create our reality. What these questions do of how am I creating limbo? What are the thoughts, the feelings, the accusations that I have towards myself, the things that I'm telling myself about this person, about this situation that are creating this state of limbo? We begin to take responsibility for our experience. And in taking responsibility for our experience, we move into the role of being the creator of our experience. And if we can begin to really truly see how we're creating the experience of limbo, we can then be the one that can dismantle that experience in a graceful way. Another thing that happens is as we start to take responsibility for how we're creating an experience of limbo and really understanding the narrative and the beliefs that we have about that person and about the situation and what it means, we start to actually begin to get a more holistic understanding of what we're unconsciously buying into that is having us feel stuck. Those unconscious beliefs then become conscious, and we can actually begin to process them with our conscious mind and question whether or not they're actually true. If this is something that feels daunting to do by yourself, you can always hire a coach, work with a therapist, work with somebody who can be a mirror for you and help you untether this. But the simple act of really journaling from this perspective, I know that it can make a difference, and I would invite you to try it. Here's another thing that happens with people that I feel are, when they're stuck in closure, when they feel like they're stuck in a place of not being able to create closure, is when the person leaves them, when the person breaks the connection, when the person breaks up with them. What often happens, especially if it feels like it was an abrupt ending, or the way that it ended was that maybe we were accused of something, maybe you were told that you were a less than ideal partner, or there was some type of insults or really harsh judgment towards you. And so it feels like this real fall from grace. Often what happens in that is this person's judgments are actually, the person who broke up with us, who decided to leave the connection, what they're actually doing is they are unearthing and revealing an already existing judgment or narrative that we have had about ourselves that we haven't had the opportunity to look at or confront, and that perhaps we've been hiding from it. This relationship, this connection, has served the purpose of revealing the places where we don't actually love ourselves, where we're holding something against who we are, where we're buying into some type of lie, some type of self-incriminating accusation about ourselves, and now we're left facing that, confronting that head on, and it can feel overwhelming. And so what we're wanting when we're wanting closure is it's almost like we're wanting to get back in a conversation with this person so that we can get permission from them to release ourselves of these self-judgments so that we can return to feeling good about ourselves and move on. Now, I think the beauty of opening up the mechanics like this is that we see then that we're outsourcing our power to this person, and that the inability to get closure is actually a reflection of us wanting permission from this person to finally feel good or think nicely about ourselves. What this can do is it then can have us see that the work here is not about getting this person to forgive us. It's not about getting this person to release their accusations about us. It's actually about us learning to forgive ourselves for those thoughts that we have about ourselves that are on full blast and the volume's turned up, and to look for contrary evidence that those things are true. I know that it can be really difficult. I get it. It's almost like when this person breaks up with us, this person perhaps pulls the connection away. It's like the Kraken's been released inside of us, and now we're dealing with this internal monster and we don't know what to do with it. And we're hoping that if we can get closure with this person, we can put it back in the box. This takes incredible amount of courage, but perhaps the Kraken of your own judgment has been released for you to finally tame it, for you to come into rapport with it, for you to actually learn to love all of you. And as you learn to love all of you, what ends up happening is you find that you don't really need that person outside of you to do anything. You don't need that person's permission to love you. You don't need that person's permission to accept you, and that you are whole and complete. It might feel like a journey, it might feel unavailable, but I want to tell you that it is actually possible. And when you see that this is about you coming into rapport with you during this time and not necessarily about needing something from them, once again, the power is restored back into your lap and the journey becomes about you and you. Another angle that I want to open up for you to look at is that oftentimes when people are failing to get closure or create closure at the end of a connection or relationship, is that there is a certain way that you were able to show up with that person in connection that perhaps you didn't give yourself permission to be that person outside of that connection with them. And so in this person's presence, there was a territory that was created that allowed you to feel more free, that allowed you to love yourself more, that allowed you to feel more self-expressed, that allowed you to come in contact with all of these wonderful things about you. And with this breakup, with this loss of the connection, there actually feels like there's a loss of self. There feels like there's an inaccessible side of you. There's a side of you that is existing that's only possible in relationship with them, that you need to somehow get back in touch with them so that you can re-experience that side of you. Again, opening up the mechanics of that, we can begin to see just how absurd it is to actually have someone else be the gatekeeper to the best sides of ourselves. We would make someone else in some ways like the bouncer to experiencing the best sides of us, and now they're no longer letting us into the venue. The invitation here is to remove the middleman, and it's to realize that this person that you are able to be in their presence, that there's still the ability to access it, but now the work becomes you taking the baton from them and you giving yourself permission to be that person without needing them to reflect it back to you. An exercise that you can do just to begin to get in touch with who this version of you is begin to ask the questions: how did you feel when you were with them? Who did you give yourself permission to be when you were with them? What did you do differently? How did you see the world? Who were you being in their presence? How were you showing up? What was your stance on life? What did you believe about other people at the time? What did you start to believe about yourself? As you get in touch with that, you begin to see that there's a certain way of being that ultimately is finally giving yourself permission to step into that version of yourself and experience it right now without having to have any permission or participation from somebody outside of you. All right, and the last thing that I want to talk about with creating closure is that sometimes we might find ourselves in a situation where the person that we were in connection with or relationship with doesn't want anything to do with us. And they are very firm that they don't want to be in contact. They don't want to have one last conversation. They don't want to be friends. Maybe they've blocked you. Perhaps the relationship has ended in a very abrupt way that has you feeling like you're questioning the validity of what happened. Like maybe the relationship and all the good things that happened weren't even real. And for you that are in those situations, I want to put out a reframe. Oftentimes I see people that are in that situation feeling desperate to get back in touch with this person and feeling that they need that person to participate. Otherwise, it invalidates the entire relationship. What if this person blocking you, not being in contact, drawing firm boundaries around being in contact, is actually the most respectful thing that they could possibly do to the connection that came beforehand to allow that relationship to end and rest in peace? And that all of your efforts to try to get back in contact with them, to require them to be involved in the closure process for you, is actually like digging up a gravesite of the relationship and trying to bring it back to life. And the action now is actually to allow the relationship to rest in peace, to allow there to be a period where there is no contact, there is no talking about it. We let that energy complete. And closure looks like silence. Closure looks like moving on. And rather than interpreting that as it meant something was insignificant that came before it, we actually see that it's the last greatest act of respect for what had happened. And us trying to get in there and meddle with it or resurrect the conversation is disrespectful to the good that happened in the relationship. If we look at it from that perspective, we might find more peace in being able to actually let things go, trusting that this person's choice to not be in contact with you is an act of respect for what happened rather than some type of disrespect or invalidation of what was occurring in the relationship. All right, so those are the 4 points for creating closure in your life with a connection or a relationship that has ended. I hope that we've been able to shift your perspective in a overt or slight way that can allow you to begin to see things differently and begin to feel differently about what's been happening in your life. Feel free to comment below, like the video, and if you would like to enter into a one-on-one dialogue with me and get some professional support during this period in your life, feel free to fill out a coaching application in the description below this video, or feel free to email me at clayton@claytonolsoncoaching.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.